This is Hannah and welcome back to my channel. It's been a while since I've added any new content to the channel. I've been busy with some volunteer work. I have time now to get back to my crafting, and so I am going to try to recreate this card that I made for my sister-in-law. Each year I do Christmas cards for her, and this year I thought I would try something different and just give her a lot of Christmas cards with silhouette images in it and see how she feels about those. My card base is the normal A2 size, so that would be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I haven't scored this yet because I'm not ready to work with it yet. And then my panel is 4 inches by 5 inches. The stamps that I'm going to be using, I'll be using this tree from this Inka Dinka Doo set, which is still available on Amazon. It's one of my favorite tree sets, and I'll be using this tree and this tree as well to create these little bushes. So, and I just alternate between those two just to give it a different shape. And then this big tree is just the white embossed tree that you see here on the side, if you can see that. Okay, so that's what that is for. I'll also be using elements from these cardio collections. So that's one is Starstruck, mini tall trees. I don't think I'm going to use anything from that one. This one, which is Christmas scenery. Yeah, so those are the ones that I'll be using. I'm using a little deer from here, mini trees from here, and the little mouse from here. And I'll also be using these two houses and probably some of the tree lines, some of the other tree lines. But if you don't have these stamps, you don't have to use these. This is just what I'm using. If you happen to have these in your collection, then that's great. But if you don't, it doesn't matter. You can use whatever stamps you have to create your card. Okay, the ink color: Stormy Sky, Wilted Violet, Chipped Sapphire, Hickory Smoke, and Squeezed Lemon. Some of the other things that I'm using here will be, like, I'm using the Nouveau Glacier Paste, and this one is the Winter White Glacier Paste, and that's just to put the snow on the rooftops. And then I'm using like a holographic glitter, and I have some fairy dust, which is just a fine glitter that I use just to get, and I'll see if you can see the, yeah, so if I wiggle that around, you can see the glitter that's all over the face of this card. And so I use a fairy dust for that. And the fairy dust glitter that I'm using is no longer available. This was from Clear Stamps, and this one is called Sugar Shimmer, and it's very pretty. And this one is white. And then I have one that's sort of a bluish color, has bluish highlights, and then another one that's brown, gives you sort of a brown highlight. But any fine, this is a super fine glitter, any fine glitter will do. I've used in the past, I've used stickle to do it. And then you'll need some blending brushes, or if you use sponges, a blending sponge, just whatever you use. You can use stencil brushes. I have some stencil brushes that I use sometimes, so if you have stencil brushes, you can use those. You will need black ink, a dyed ink. I use the Memento Tuxedo black ink, but any black ink will do. And then white embossing powder. I use the Wow white embossing powder, but again, any embossing powder that you use. And then glue. Now, my favorite glue is this Books by Hand pH neutral PVA glue. This is great, and I keep it on hand all the time. I keep several bottles. Okay, so we're going to do our sky first. And to create the skyline, I just do the old tear a piece of paper, and I am probably like the world's worst at tearing paper and trying to get mountains and valleys. So whatever shape I come up with, I just try to work with that and come up with an interesting landscape. But because I do want to have like a moon and my star, I need to make sure that I have enough of a valley here to create this image right here. Get your paper positioned, and I am turning my card around because I'll work better with that. And the first color that I'm using is the Stormy Sky. Okay. Just ink up my brush, and we want to start obviously off the paper. I'm just going to put another like sheet of paper under here. Okay. And so I'm just going to start a little way off the paper and then work my way on to the cardstock. And I just go in a circular motion, and I go all the way around and create just like a halo effect. And then I go across the bottom and I'm going to go over this again with a darker shade, like with the chipped sapphire or hickory smoke, to give it a little more definition. But right now I'm just framing my sky. Now that I've done that, I want to give it a little depth. So I'm going to go in over this with the chipped sapphire. And I go into my corners first because I really want this middle portion to have lightness. I don't want it to be really heavy and dark. So, and then I just come around the edges, and that adding this darker color will add more depth. These, I kind of like my makeup brushes better than these craft brushes, but these seem to take a little more time, and it might just be because mine are I've used them so much. But anyway, so you just want to get that depth in there. The final color that I will use here, and I'm just going to clean my brush off a little bit, is that I will go in with just a little bit of the hickory smoke, just a little bit, not a lot, and just sort of blend that in a little bit around the edges. And that's just, again, just to add a little depth, a little more depth. And I don't put a lot on because it is a gray color and I don't want too much of that. And then just sort of blend it in. As with anything, when you're doing this, you just have to eyeball it and get it to a place that you're comfortable with in the color of your sky. But like I said, try to leave enough of white space so that you can get your yellows and your other halos in. Okay, so I think I'm okay with that. I may go in and add some more color once I get the other elements in, but right now I want to get my template, put my moon in, and we'll go from there. All right, so to create my moon, I just used my Fiskars 2-inch circle die, and I'm just trying to position this where it's just half or just a portion of the moon is showing. I can go in with like my squeeze lemonade. Okay. Oh, come on. And I'm just brushing outward just to create that kind of yellowish glow. Now I'm going to take some more of the Stormy Sky. And I don't want a lot of this either. And I'm just going to brush outward around it. And so that gives me my moon. And you can take your the squeezed lemonade, you can go around the edges if you want, because you could make this like a sunrise over your landscape, and you can put in reds and little yellow and some lavender, and then that gives you that sunrise effect. But for this, we're just going to go with just the squeezed lemonade for this one. And whenever I'm crafting, I always remind myself that this is my world, so I can make it whatever I want it to be. And so I do make it a reflection of, you know, how I see the world. Okay, so I like that. And I am going to come down and work on this ridge line, but I'll work on that later. So now that I have this first snow line set, you can take the same paper and you can turn it over and put it at an angle. You can take another sheet of paper that you've torn to create your snow banks. I'm going to, I think, work with this one just. So let's put another here. And I'll have it cross over on top of this one. And I'm going to go down the edge of this with the, yeah, ooh, I like that. That made a nice, yeah. And then depending on if I decide I'm going to put more animals there, usually I just would stop with these drifts and then just fill this in at the bottom, starting off the edge. And this is just to warm this up. And so I'm taking the Stormy Sky and just coming in and pulling the color in, and then I'll go over it with the chipped sapphire. So just getting the framing, and now it's not so stark and so white. Now, bear in mind, whenever you're doing this, the distress inks, when they dry, will lighten up. So even when you have a card that it looks like it might be a little dark here, just remember this is going to lighten up. All right, so now I have to decide where I'm going to place my various elements, and I know where I want my star, and so I will put my star in first. And the star that I'm using comes from the Cardio Starstruck stamp collection. So I will take my acetate, I put it down on my Stamping Pro stamp. Okay. On my Stamping Pro stamp platform, and whoops, God, let me turn this around. And so I just lined this up. I hope my head doesn't get in the camera. And so I just try to line the element up there, and then pick it up on my Stamping Pro. And you can do that without the acetate, but I find that I like using the acetate. I do think on this one I might want to bring my star, but all I do to make that happen is just push my card up because I just want a little more room. Okay, and so there, I'm set to go with that. All right, so even though I'm going to emboss this, I am going to first stamp it in the black ink, because I may decide to leave it black. I don't think that I will. I think I'll probably go ahead and use the embossing powder to emboss it, but I'm gonna put down I will go ahead and do the embossing now. So I am going to take my Versamark watermark ink, and I'm going to go ahead and get this out of the way right now. All right, so let's get this done. And before I forget, because I tend to forget, I don't want the embossing powder sticking all over everywhere. So I'm just rubbing this over with my embossing powder so that the embossing will only stick where I want it to stick. So put that down on there. Very good. Okay, so now this embossing powder that I'm using is no longer available, and I use it very sparingly because once I've used it, I'm done. But with embossing powder, because you can use it, you know, over and over again, I will have this for many more years to come. I've had this embossing powder now for, I don't know, 10, 20, ooh, almost 15 years. Or maybe longer, maybe over 20 something years. And I still have a lot of it left. So with embossing powder, you don't have to worry. So I've got that on there. Now, I'm going to let my heat gun heat up for just a minute. Okay, and I usually start by embossing the back part of my card first. And I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera, but the reason I like this particular embossing powder is because it's it has a lot of, if I move this, maybe you can see, you see the sparkle. It's like a silver, but it has a really great sparkle to it. So it creates a lot of dimension. So it dries almost like a thick embossing powder, even though it's not. It's a finer one, but it does give you a good emboss. And then if you have any stray embossing powder, you can just brush that away. So that's my first element placed on the card. And now I'm going to figure out where I want to put my animals and my houses. The next element that I want to place is my tree. And on this card, I'm going to let a little more of my tree show than I did on the last card. And so for this, again, I just place it where I want it on the stamping platform, ink it up with my embossing powder. Ink it up with my Versamark embossing ink. Down there, good. And then emboss it with white embossing powder. Okay, so I've got my tree done, and some of the tree is disappearing into the snow, and I should have brought my blue in just a little bit more. I wasn't thinking I was going to show this much tree, but I can, you know, fix that by going over it with some blue, a little blue in between the branches. Now, before I move forward with this, in the snow, my snow still right now looks a little bland, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of the wilted violet, gonna, you know, obviously clean some of it off, and then I'm just gonna randomly hit areas in the snow, and I'm gonna do some behind the tree because that'll, you know, bring my tree out. Yeah, a little bit more there than I actually wanted, but that's okay. We'll be able to blend that out. So you can add like the purple, you can add pink, these colors that will break up just the white of the snow. To get rid of this, and I'm going to just take a paper towel and wet it with a little bit of water, and I'm going to dab it where I put down too much of the wilted purple and the wilted violet, and then it just comes right up. And just brush and calm. All I'm trying to do is calm down this white in my snow. Just calm it down a little bit. I like to just give it a little additional shading, and I'm not putting much, and a lot of this is going to be covered up by other elements. And I just try to lift some of the ink off my brush and just go back over this, and it gives it a really nice effect when you get it all blended in there. And you have to take time to get these things right the way you want them. So that's, for me, it's good. I don't have that kind of flat white snow. And I might go back in and put other elements in once I place some more of my images. So now that I've got my tree here, I'm going to go ahead and put my church in place. I have the church in place, and that lined up. I think I'm going to put this little hedge right here. I think that's where I want that. And like I said, the acetate is a great way to see where your elements are going to, or how they're going to look once you've chosen a location for them. So, and I won't use because I'm just making this like a little brush, like a little, you don't really have sage brushes anyway, but I'm just going to take this, so I'll know. I'll move that a little bit, but, and I'm going to make this one, I'm going to emboss this with white embossing ink as well. Okay, so I was ready to put my houses on, and I stamped this house here using my stamping platform, and then I wanted another house on this side of the church. So what I did was I took my little paper smoochie here, and I placed it down on top of the house so I didn't have to move my stamp. And then I just stamped, inked it up, stamped the image of the house onto the paper smoochie, and it picked it up. And then I just flipped it over and put it down where I wanted it. And that's how you can do mirror stamping. You don't really have to have paper smoochies. These I've had for some years, and you have all the different shapes. Well, not all the different shapes, but you have the rectangular shapes, a circle, and then an oval. But you can use just a plain piece of acetate, and you will get the same result. And I use just a regular dye ink. Pigment ink works better for this kind of maneuver because it doesn't dry as quickly as the dye inks do, but the Memento worked just fine for me, for my purposes. So I've got the house in place. So I'm going to put a few more elements down. I'm going to add a few more critters to the scene. And I've been working on learning how to do perspectives and how to stamp things that are far away and close up. And so I've been doing these cards to practice that skill. Now that I have all of my images stamped, I have my trees, the houses, I'm going to put snow on the rooftops. And to do that, I'm using the Nouveau Glacier Paste, and this is the winter white, and I just put it on the end of a popsicle stick and just sort of touch it. Just sometimes I'll use a brush, but since I'm trying to get a thick layer of snow on these, I just sort of lay it down like this. So I have my snow on my rooftops now, and so now what I'm going to do is take my glue pen. Oh, let me cover this up because I don't want this to dry out. Okay, so I'm going to take my glue pen and squeeze it, get it started, and I'm going to just put glue dots just lightly, and I'm not squeezing this around my star though. I try to put dots so that it looks like they're radiating out, and I'm just going to do the top part first. Okay, yeah, that works okay. So that looks good. So what I'm going to do now is start to build the highlights on my snow. And I'm just doing dots. I used to do like draw a straight line, and I usually would get the glitter would be too thick, and I didn't like the way that looked. Oh yes, that worked out very nicely. And of course the glitter will let's see if I can get this. Oh, there. Oh, there we go. Now you can see it. There, it's very pretty. And I will tap more of this glitter off, so it's not an overabundance of glitter, but it does have a really nice, pretty shine to it. Okay, so here we have the finished card. I had a little recording boo-boo. I thought that I had the camera going, but it wasn't. It was on pause while I affixed the card to the base, but I just simply, glued it down, so you didn't miss anything. But there's our sparkly Christmas card. I added a sentiment. It's Christmas. It turned out really well. It has a lot of sparkle and shine. And it was fairly quick to make, I think, and I'm going to do a couple more like this. So I hope that you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it easy to follow, and I will list all of the materials that I use in the description box below. Thank you so much for stopping by. See you next time. Bye.